The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Shalom and welcome to the synagogue. This is a podcast for consenting adults for information, education, and entertainment on BDSM, sexuality, and all things related. If you're not a legal, enthusiastically consenting adult, then
pick up the needle, press pause, or turn the radio off.
For those who remain, now might be a good time to switch to your headphones.
Welcome to the synagogue. I am your host. They call me the rabbi.
Pretty fly for a rabbi.
I put the sin in synagogue, and I am a cisgender, ambimorous, gynosexual, sadistic, bratty daddy doll. Sex therapist by day, kink educator by night, and in both these roles I help people make their kink a religious experience. While I am a mental health professional, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a replacement for therapy. Seek out the assistance of a trained professional for help with your specific situation. Hosting with me today is my partner, my ADHD squirrel wrangler, my submissive, my brat, my little, my pony, or just my little pony. The Sunny to my share, Little Bit.
Hey, everybody.
This is episode number 2, and with me today is JustRob to talk about scene negotiations for fun and profit. Negotiations make up the backbone of your scene. We'll talk about the why and the how of one of the most important parts of the BDSM community, as well as discuss techniques and address negotiating varied types of scenes, including heavy impact, blood play, and edge play, and more. But first, a word from our sponsor. JustRob, he/him, has been active in the community since 2008. He identifies primarily as a top and a Leatherman, but on occasion he takes on the roles of sadist, dominant, leader, mentor, and teacher. He is especially passionate about and active in the local polyamory community. His areas of expertise are primarily in impact play, everything from fists and palms to whips and everything in between, electricity, specifically the violet wand, and medical play, focused on play piercing and staples. In general, he is a reaction junkie who craves blood and other bodily fluids. Overall, however, his passion is helping people find their way in this lifestyle and helping those who already have found it to navigate it safely and grow personally.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here in the synagogue. Rob, tell us more about scene negotiation.
Sure. One of the things that sort of, I've always kind of been squicked out at is the whole checklist thing, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I am an ADHD person, and I'm a checklist person, right? But one of the things that I think is really fun about negotiations, and one of the things that I think can be really useful, is the fact that we are having a discussion with a person, right? The act of that we're not just checking boxes off, right? That we're not just, hey, do you like this? You know, select yes or no, right? It's not just the, you know, for folks that I think are probably our age, right? Remember the little things in school you made with the out of paper that you put your fingers in, that you moved your fingers and you know, the little Pac-Man looking thing that you moved your fingers in and out, and you selected one and you opened it up and it unfurled like a flower thing, right? I feel like that's kind of what people are doing, and it's like, okay, but not as interesting as that, right? I think of it kind of like my brain thinks of it kind of like it is information gathering, right? But it's fun. It's foreplay, right? And there's lots of information that you can get by talking to someone and by looking at how they react to the conversation, right? And and seeing how that conversation branches based on reactions and based on answers, rather than just this kind of scripted, like, customer service phone call kind of, what's the next question on the script kind of response, right? So I really kind of advocate for people, those things are fine, right? You should definitely have a clear picture about, when you negotiate with someone, what it is that you want and what it is that you're prepared to do and what it is that you're good at and what a reasonable expectation about, what are my skills, right? What am I good at versus what am I less experienced at? And what am I comfortable with versus what am I less comfortable with? All of those things that would be on that checklist, right? That information is pertinent, right? It's just the way we go about expressing that to others and the way we go about acquiring that information from the other person or persons that I think it really, I think, will sometimes make or break what we're doing, right? It's a way we can get the other person super interested, sometimes more interested in what it is that we're doing than simply the idea of the thing itself by how we go about doing that, right? And so I think that's sort of my intro into this, is to say, this is a conversation, right? This is a chance to do some foreplay, right? To sort of, if that's what you want to do, right? To start. It's almost the start of things, right? If that's how you play and if that's consensual, right? It can be the start of things, right? But it should be, I think for me at least, in the way I play and the way I like to approach this, it should be a conversation. It should, rather than a sort of, sliding a piece of paper across the table sort of, we say negotiation, right? And it makes it sound very clinical, very, very cold. Like it's, like we're, trying to, negotiate an interest rate on a used car, right? I mean, if that's your kink, right? If you've got like a paperwork kink or, like a hardline negotiation kink, like, no, sell, I'll take no less than 25%, then great, then do that. That's cool. But like, I think most of us are in it for something a little different. And I think we should not think about negotiation as this thing that's necessary before we start playing and before we start getting our rocks off. And we should see it as a part of what we're doing, right? We should see it not as a necessary evil, not as this thing that we have to do to have fun, but a thing that is part of what we do, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And then people would take it more seriously, right? And people would invest in it, right? Invest in the quality of it, right? And not just see it as a thing they've got to get done. Like it's not just a eating their vegetables thing, right? But see it as but start taking it not only as a thing that I have to do because I have to do it, or seeing it as a CYA, like as a cover my ass kind of thing, but see it as a thing that they want to do and that they want to be good at and that they want to be inclusive and that they want to be successful at, right?
So making it a conversation so that way it's enjoyable and fun.
Absolutely. There's a level of, I think, if, at least for me, right, whenever my best scenes are with people who I have a connection with, not just do we want to do the thing, right, but that we're both really there, right? That like we both, well, I mean, for one, we're both getting what we want,
sure,
right? But not only are we just getting what we want, like not only is it a successful transaction, so to speak, right? But that we got more than we wanted, right? Like we took something away from it other than we took memories away from it, not sensations.
Yeah, not checking off a box.
Checklists are great, but checklists aren't enthusiastic consent.
Absolutely. That's what I meant. That falls in a lot to that. Reactions, right? A lot, at least where I am in my journey, a lot of what I do is stuff that people are not sure about. They're things that people have convinced themselves they want to try, but are not, and they're doing it for the first time, right? And so, you know, they come up to me and they go, oh, like, you know, I saw on FetLife that you do stuff with barbed wire. Like, we should play. Oh, okay. So you want to do some barbed wire? Okay. And so, like, you know, we show, you know, we start talking and stuff, and you know, I start asking some questions about what they want and what their intention is and how we expect this to go, right? And you know, you can tell from their body language and from how they're answering questions and things that this has become real, right? That this is now no longer just an idea, right? But now there's a thing in front of them where this idea has been started to become manifest, and now they're having to go in their head. Not that I'm some like scary monster or some badass or whatever, but just that, like, you know, no, they've taken steps to make a thing that was in their head real, and now they're having that now they're having to deal with that reality, right? And so it's one of those things where, you know, to your point, Rabbi, you can say, you know, you can ask somebody a question and you can get, you know, yeah, I want to do that. Okay. You can get a, yeah, I want to do that. Oh, okay. Well, but do you really? Like that doesn't sound like a yes, right? You can get a yes that doesn't sound like a yes, right? Or you can get a yes that sounds enthusiastic but doesn't look enthusiastic from their body language, right? You know, shoulders slumped, right? Not making eye contact.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In our world, that's not always a great indicator, because sometimes that's just people's natural affectation, right? But you have to take the whole totality of it into consideration. Mm-hmm. But yeah, absolutely. Certainly, if you're just, you know, checking boxes off on a form, like you're filling out, you know, an application to rent an apartment or whatever, right? You know, unless you're checking how vigorously they're, you know, checking the box or, you know, filling in their hard limits list, right? It's certainly much more difficult in my experience to ascertain, you know, their level of enthusiasm, right? Their level of how invested they're in this, in that context, right? Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's you know, it's for me it's about setting realistic expectations, and for me, it's about setting. It's you know, it's interesting. People perceive negotiations about getting a yes, but for me, it's about setting outs, right? Giving people the ability, or these points where it's easy for them to say no, right? For them to see that they should get out, right? So as that progression happens, if they're feeling that way, my goal is to give them the chance and to make it as easy as possible for them to go, you know what? This sounded like a great idea, and I was really enthusiastic about this. But you know what? I'm having second thoughts. Because I'd much rather them tell me that than us go forward with something. And whether that has any impact on me or not, it's not a CYA thing on my perspective. I'm not worried about like my reputation, or I don't want people to do stuff they don't want to do, right? I don't want people to have a bad time. I don't want people, I don't want people to feel coerced or people to feel like, oh, well, I did it because I didn't want, I tell people, and people look at me weird. When I say this, I say the only way that you're going to disappoint me is if you don't tell me no, or you don't, like, if I find out that you continued playing or that you went ahead with this and you didn't want to,
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way I'm going to be disappointed right now.
Yeah, you've described yourself as a reaction junkie, and I love that, and I describe myself the same way after hearing you use it, but you're looking for that good reaction, not a forced reaction.
Yeah. Or at least show in some way that they are going to stick up for themselves, right? Advocate for themselves in some way, not in a confrontational, like, well, I'm bad and they need to protect themselves from me. But what we do is dangerous, and what we do can is always, everyone always needs to be looking out for themselves, because there's always ways in which, even when we have the best of intentions, things can go wrong, or there can be oversights, right? And so, like you said, Rabbi, I need people that I'm playing with to overlook the who I am, and to be able to advocate for themselves, to tell me, hey, like, no, or we need to stop, or, whatever that is, right? For both of our safety.
Yeah.
Right. Not just for their safety, but for my safety and for everyone's well-being. And because there is inherently a power imbalance in lots of different ways, not just the top, bottom, dom, sub part, but I have to acknowledge, me being someone who is a presenter and a teacher, who, goes to events and someone who, people see on FetLife and online doing things. There's an inherent power imbalance through that. There are, sort of societal power imbalances based on my, gender presentation, based on my, all sorts of things, right? Yeah. So I have to acknowledge that there are, power imbalances that exist that might make that more difficult than I would see it as, and I try to make sure that I'm creating as open of a place environment as possible for that empowerment to exist. Just making it known that, like, hey, we need this, right? And that I need that from you to do that. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've always said I don't completely trust a play partner until they tell me no on something. So I think that's very important to do in the negotiation process.
Well, I think the very first thing for me is who initiates it, right? Whether it's the top or the bottom, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, I think, I mean, for me personally, right, how I do things versus how I would say other people should do things is probably a little different. Only because the way I play now, because of where I am in my journey, has kind of changed a little bit. In that there's very rarely, for me personally, there's very rarely any kind of discussion about what is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
because usually people are approaching me to play, and usually they're approaching me with a very specific idea or sort of like dance card that they have in mind, right? So rarely do I need to do a lot of negotiating about the what, right? A lot of it is just practicalities, right? Like people will say, oh, well, like I want to do a saline infusion this weekend. Oh, well, sorry, I don't have my stuff with me.
That's important.
Okay, well, then that sort of puts that into play, right? But or well, let's, can we do some barbed wire? Well, like we're at an event and like, we can't really get that messy here. Okay.
Valuable information to know.
Yeah, stuff like that, right? But so, whereas other people might, other people will certainly have to do that kind of legwork, right? As to like, well, okay, what are limits and, what do you want to do and what is okay and not okay? I don't really do much of that anymore because basically everything that I'm doing that's not with established partners who I have established relationships and negotiations and agreements with is very limited in scope. But certainly if that weren't the case, and when that wasn't the case in my life, the first thing was obviously, well, like, what do you want to do? Like, what's on the table here? Now a lot of it for me is focused on a lot less on sort of what our boundaries are and a lot more about what is it that you want. Meaning, what is it that you want to experience, right? How is it that you want to feel?
Sure.
Why is it that you want to do this, right? Why me as opposed to anybody else, right? A lot less about the sort of practical details and more about the I think about it as like, well, what does success look like here, right? Like when you sat down and started talking, you probably had a picture in your head of what the outcome looked like, right? Like what you wanted this to be when it was over, right? I want that. I want you to tell me what that is, right? And let's work from there and figure out what how to make that happen, right?
Well, and some of the times, some of us don't even know, like, what it is that we want and, how to tell you.
Right. And figure out where that matches what my desires and my skills and my capabilities are, right? It makes it sound very service toppy, right? But what it really is saying, okay, well, like, this is what you want, right? And, a lot of that sounds really hot, right? Or somebody comes to me and says, oh, this is my picture for this. And I go, God, that sounds, and my head is saying, that sounds boring, right? And so then my brain goes, okay, well, how do we, what is the important part here? Like, what's the intention? How do we change this so that I'm interested in it too? Let me start making suggestions. Now we start negotiating. Now we start trying to figure it out, right? But if they come to me with something and my brain goes, yeah, that's fucking hot. Let's do this. Let's figure out how to make that happen, right? Well, then they've done a lot of the work already. Now it's my job just to figure out, okay, like, what are the edges of the sandbox, right? Where are the no-go zones? Like, where are the no bits, right? And then how do we get there? And, what are the ways in which we're going to, tumble out, right? What are the ways in which we're going to pop the bubble too soon, right? And so that's kind of the way I approach it, kind of a end back rather than beginning forward. Just because I think the beginning, if you think about it theoretically, the beginning is so wide open.
Sure.
And I think so many people get stuck because if you start negotiating from the beginning, like, we could do anything, and what do you want to do? Well, it's kind of like the couple that's sitting at the house trying to figure out what to eat for dinner, right? Well, what do you want to eat? Well, I don't know. I know I just don't want to eat, Mexican because I went out with tacos with my lunch friends for lunch. Okay, well, not Mexican. Okay, well, yeah, but like I had pizza. They had pizza at work today, so I don't have pizza. Okay, so we've established we don't want pizza or Mexican, and then that's it. Mm-hmm. Right? So what are we going to do for dinner? Okay, well, we're going to have not pizza or not Mexican.
Roll the dice.
Okay, well, what does that mean? What are you eating? Mm-hmm. Right? But, if you work backwards and say, well, I'd really like to have some pasta. Okay, well, that's a start. So let's work backwards from there, right? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people get really, really sort of bogged down in how wide open working from the beginning to the end, or working from the beginning of the story to the end of the story, is, because the beginning of the story can start in so many different ways.
Sure. Oh, so, like, for those of us who might be not sure or, don't know what the end of that looks like, still having that conversation could still be helpful, even if you don't know the end goal, because say you haven't tried this new implement before and you don't know what the end is going to be. Something like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing I want to say is that it's okay if you don't know what the end of the story looks like. If it's okay to say, like, what I want out of this scene is to explore something. And I don't know what the end looks like, right? You just have to understand that your expectations need to be different if that's what you want, right? If you have expectations about what the ending looks like, you need to be honest about the fact that you do have those expectations. Because a lot of what I find when people don't have their expectations met is that they want people to believe that they don't have those expectations, but secretly they do. And so what happens is their expectations aren't met because those expectations are not expressed.
Sure.
Because they really want to do the thing, but they're afraid if they express expectations that the thing won't be done, that they'll be extra, right? They'll be, oh, well, this person won't want to play with me if I express what I really want, right? Mm-hmm. But then they don't get what they want because they didn't actually say what they want, and then they're upset that they didn't get it. So it's okay to say, you know what? I think the idea of flogging is really hot, right? I'd like to, and you are someone who is experienced at flogging, and I am less experienced, and I would like to explore this, right? Let's set up some parameters where you can help me explore this, right? That's fine. You just have to understand that, like, if you don't understand where you want it to end, that it could end in a lot of different places, and you have to accept that as a learning situation. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to accept anything that you get. You still have rights. You still are allowed to set boundaries, right? And you're still allowed to have a safe word. You're still allowed all of those things.
Yeah.
You're still allowed to be safe and feel safe. But it means that you don't, if whether you go into subspace or not, right? Whether you are turned on or not, right? Whether you orgasm or not, all of those things. If you don't know if those are possible, that's what you're here to learn, right? And so you have to understand that you're learning them, right? And so, yeah, but, even if you're less experienced, you can certainly go into this saying, hey, I want to figure out if I like this thing, or I want to figure out if this thing can make me come, right? And try to figure those things out in this framework. Yeah. You don't have to be doing something, really edgy or, on the more edgy side or whatever, right? It's just a way that I think about it in terms of thinking about how to set it. For me, it's much less about what you're doing and much more about how to set expectations, right? That's what the, end of the story back perspective to me does, is it sets expectations, right? Because ultimately we're all looking at the outcome. Like at the end of the scene, right, we're all evaluating the outcome of what happened, right? And it's disingenuous of us to not say that, to say that we aren't, right? So it seems logical to me for us to start there if we have a reasonable idea of what we want that to be.
Yeah, and full disclaimer here, Rob does a lot of edge play type stuff. For those beginners out there listening, all the same ideas still apply.
Mm-hmm. And then, within that context, right? If anybody's ever done a negotiations 101 class, right? You'll have all the same things still apply in terms of negotiating, things, triggers, both emotionally and physical, medical concerns, whether they be, current, medical situations, current medications that you're on, past medical conditions, things that might be, situational, mental health situations, either past or current, environmental conditions, sense situations that might be of concern, limits, past trauma, past experience. Like with a lot of the stuff I do, right, I end up playing with a lot of people that are trying, like sharps play again after a bad experience. And so I do a lot of talking with these people about, well, why was it bad the last time? What made it bad? Like, why did you not enjoy it the last time? Mm-hmm. Right? Kind of trying to troubleshoot a little bit, right? Not necessarily, I don't see it as like trauma, right? I don't, I'm not trying to pathologize people here. I'm not treating anyone like they've got a past, quote unquote, right? But, I certainly want to understand people's experiences, right? And try to understand where they've been.
Sure.
Right? And understand that that's a path that they've already gone down and that was not fun for them, right? And is not where they're looking to go again, right? Because I am looking to take them down a new path, right? And they're obviously trusting me to take them someplace new, right? And they're trying this again, right? They're having the courage and, and care enough about themselves and their journey to do this again, despite having had a bad experience, right? So I'm going to do everything I can to try to understand, what happened the last time, right? To not do that again, if nothing else, just so that they don't have another bad experience or have the same thing, right? But so there's a lot of that, and I don't think that that's exclusive to sharps play, right? I've had those same conversations with people about canes, right, and whips and violet wand, right? That's very common. I find with the violet wand. Right, a lot of people whose first violet wand experience was with someone who was overeager, right, and went too hard, too fast, and like kind of and really soured them of it. And then they'll see me in the dungeon, and Rabbi, I know you do some wand as well, and so you've probably seen this as well, right?
Yeah.
You know, that like somebody will see us do some wand in the dungeon, and they'll see how much fun we're having, and they'll go, you know, the time I did it, it wasn't that fun, and they go, well, it looks like it could be fun. That could be me. I could be having fun like that. Maybe I'll give it another try, right? You know, and so then you have to figure out, well, why didn't you have fun the last time, right? What was it? And 9 times out of 10 for me, it's, oh, well, the person I did it with last time, they just got their wand out and they cranked it up to 10 and they just started zapping me all over the place and it just overloaded me.
Oof.
And I just like, I couldn't take it.
Oh,
and
that's
like
fun.
Well, like that'll do it, right? So, you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, from this perspective, right, it's trying to do laying all that same groundwork of just getting all of that same do's and don'ts, all that sort of baseline information you need, you know, that you would, you know, sort of do for any negotiation for any type of play. Still applies in this model of, you know, starting from the end, you know, conversationally, right? We're just going to get it, you know, we're just going to get it in a different way, in more a conversational way, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that it really does is it allows you to have more of a conversation, right? So, you know, you can sort of suss out not just what is okay and not okay, but really what excites people, right? So not just that they'll accept something or that are okay with something, but you can really start to get inside people's heads about which of these things really like turns them on or excites them versus which of these things are just things that like they like or will accept. And there's been lots of times where I've figured out that the reason a bottom says okay to something in a negotiation is because they think that I want it. And not because they want it. Because they'll react to thing A, and I can tell that it's got their naughty bits all tingly, right? And then they react to the next thing lukewarm. And so I go, do you really want, like, tell me about thing B, right? What, you know, and they go, well, you know, I've seen, you know, I know you, or I see things about you online and stuff, and like you do thing B a lot, and so I figured you probably wouldn't want to play unless we did thing B. I'm like, that's not the question I asked you. I didn't ask you if you thought I would want to do thing B. I asked if you wanted to do thing B. And as a matter of fact, now I don't want to do thing B. Thing B is now off the table. Because now I know you want to do thing A, and I want to do thing A too, and I want to do thing A more now because your body language and stuff has told me that you really want to do thing A, and you're sort of ambivalent about thing B, and so I don't want to do thing B because I don't want to do something you're ambivalent about, but I want to do more of thing A because I know thing A is the thing that's really getting your naughty bits, you know, tingly, and that's the kind of energy I think that you and I are, you know, sort of exchanging here right now. And if that's okay with you, that's the kind of energy I'd like for us to play with.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the reaction junkie label, you're looking for a positive reaction. If you're doing something they don't really want to do, you're not going to get that positive reaction.
Yeah, or at least the thing that is going to get the strongest reaction that I believe they are okay with giving.
Fair.
Because I can figure out how to get all kinds of reactions out of people, but I know some of those reactions they're not going to be comfortable with. Like, I've had lots of instances where I've figured out what turns people on, but I also have figured out that those people are not comfortable being turned on in the scene. So those things become a no-go place, even though the back of my brain goes, it'd be so fucking hot. you could get this person so fucking worked up right now, right? But then there's that other part of me that goes, yeah, but that would make them really uncomfortable right now. And like, they haven't said that you can't, right? But that's not the vibe here, right? That's not really what you want to do here, right? But there are often times where the strongest thing I might get is frustration or irritation, right? I have a partner that I've been with for years and years, and she is a heavy impact bottom, and a lot of our impact scenes start with her being bound and her not being beaten for extended periods of time, and her being very upset about it. Because now she has mentally worked herself up to do this hardcore impact scene where I and one or multiple of her other partners are going to beat her with these, baseball bats and all of these things, right? And then I and her other partners then sit down and, drink a Coke and watch her and laugh at her as she is, bound to a piece of furniture naked, like yelling at us.
That's fantastic.
What are you doing? Why aren't you playing? Oh, well, we are playing. And you are too. You just don't understand it.
Playing cards.
Yeah. No, we're playing see how long it takes the Amazon to break the furniture because she's not getting what she wants. And that and to me, I'm playing. That to me, like that is touching all the same buttons in my brain, right? As having someone on a table making them come with a violet wand. All the exact same buttons in my brain are getting pushed when she is, bound to that furniture and yelling at me because she's pissed off that I'm not there beating the shit out of her, right? All the same things in my brain, right? But I don't want to do that with everyone. Even though I know that I can evaluate people and figure out for most people what gets them to that place, that's not the vibe or the energy or the connection I want to make with a lot of people. Now, some people come out the gate and with kind of hardcore brat energy, hardcore sort of fight back, play back energy, and we can say, hey, like, if that's what you want to do, like, we can do that. And, that's cool. We'll do that. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's why I say I'm a reaction junkie, because like, sadist indicates that like, it's gotta be about pain, right? Like physical pain. And for me, it doesn't have to be about physical pain, right? It can be emotional torment. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what are some red flags for you when negotiating a scene?
Well, I mean, there's some of the typical red flag stuff. I don't hear it. I don't personally hear it much anymore, just because the people that exhibit that kind of stuff just tend to get filtered out by the time they get to me. But the people who are misrepresenting their experience level, the people who have quote unquote no limits, right? Like that is, and I dislike the people who are sort of flippant about responding to that by saying, oh, well, let me, grab my chainsaw or whatever. Like that's funny, but I don't think that teaches those people the context of why their way of thinking is dangerous. I think the goal is that there are people out there that have, the chainsaw in their trunk, who are looking for those people who think that they don't have limits, right? And I wish that wasn't the case, and maybe I'm alarmist, right? Maybe I'm the stick in the mud that thinks that it's too scary out there, but I think that those folks do kind of need someone to realistically help them understand why that way of thinking is dangerous. I definitely think that the one thing that does turn me off, or that does give me pause, is people who are over eager, people who are, they're looking to get, they're almost like they're in frenzy. Like, I want to get to the thing. I want to do the thing. Right? Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll talk and stuff, but I want to do the thing. Right? Because for me, the doing the talking stuff, like I said, is not a thing that I have to do to get to do the thing. It's a part of the thing, and it's important, right? It's not a technicality, right? And so that gives me pause. That, I sort of have to evaluate that. And then, I mean, once again, a problem that I think I have, and where I am in my journey that a lot of other people don't have, is just trying to evaluate people's motivations. Right? I get a lot of people who, I go to an event and I teach, and people are interested in playing with me because I'm there teaching.
Sure.
Right? And they're not really interested in playing with me. They're there interested in playing with JustRob, the guy on FetLife. Right? But like, not really me, the person. Like, they want to play with my FetLife profile. Yeah, not me, the person, right? So they're not really taking a lot of what is happening seriously, right? Like it's all happening in this cloud of an idea they have, and that I've had some pretty scary situations happen in the past where I wasn't super aware of that. Like, I thought that was stuff that happened to other people, but not me. Like, I'm not Fet famous enough for that. Like, I'm not important enough for that, right? Like, I'm not, that happens to other people, right? That happens to the people on KNP. That doesn't happen to me. But no, then it happened to me. And so now I'm much more aware of and cognizant of people's,
Sure.
Which is one of the things that reinforces that idea of starting from the end and working back, right? Because when you ask those people, well, what does the end look like? And, the end is, oh, well, like, and it starts to feel like the end is, oh, well, I go on FetLife and everyone, looks at the pictures of the needles you did on me, and then everyone, thinks how cool I am. Yikes. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that's exactly, I don't think that's really a great ending to the story for me. Like, not that I don't want people, like, if that happens, right, like, as a consequence of something that we do, great. But, like, I don't know. I'm not sure that I feel comfortable with that being the goal in this context, right? Like, I'm not comfortable being here to make you more popular.
Yeah, I've had a little of that too, and I know that happens to people who are like locally famous, the dungeon owners and whatnot.
Yeah. So those are the big things, but other than that, like, contextually, right? Like, I tell people I've done sharps play with people who, I'll tell you the other thing, and then, which is people who I believe are not being honest with me about the answers to questions about their about things like their medical background. I tell people, especially when we're doing stuff like sharps play, I've done sharps play with people who are HIV positive that I've known are HIV positive. Because I know I take universal precautions, and I know what my risk profile is. And I had a conversation with them, and I said, listen, this is within my risk profile, and I know these are the precautions I'm going to take, right? And here's what I'm going to do to keep myself safe and to keep you safe, and here's how we're going to do this. And are you okay with that? And they were like, yeah, sure, let's do this. And we did stuff, right? I also know that there have been people who have lied to me about their STI or, bloodborne pathogen status to get me to do things with them. And that, that's dangerous, right? And so that, and so the thing is that almost any answer that you give me, as long as I believe it's truthful, or, you've got paperwork to show me that shows that it's truthful, is not the wrong answer, right? Like you telling me that you're positive for some bloodborne pathogen is not a non-starter, but me believing that you're being dishonest with me about something is, right? So I think that's the thing I like to reiterate is, let's destigmatize being positive for some sort of STI or bloodborne pathogen, but let's stigmatize the hell out of being dishonest about it.
Sure.
Right? Don't lie to me about it. I'm not gonna make you, feel bad about whatever it is, whatever your status is, whatever your condition is, right? As long as you don't lie to me about it when it's my safety and your safety that's on the table here.
Sure.
Right? That for me is a big one. And it's a big one for me because I do a lot of, I admittedly do a lot of play that involves bodily fluids, right? So that I think that's probably the other big thing for me is just, once again, a lot of trust boundaries, right? Do I trust that you'll tell me no, that you'll advocate for yourself? Do I trust that you're being honest with me when I ask you questions about those things, right? Have you eaten or had some, are you well hydrated, right? Are you on blood thinners, right? Things like that, stuff like that, right? I gotta trust you, right? And I'm typically a pretty trusting person until you give me a reason not to be, right? I try really hard to be, a trusting person until I have a reason to not trust you. So
I think the most important thing when negotiating a scene with somebody is to be honest and be truthful. We've all been new before. We've all not known what we're doing. There's nothing to be ashamed about there. Even various diagnosis, there should be no shame there. You want your scene to turn out well, and the best way to ensure that happens is to be honest with the person you're playing with during the negotiations, whether it's your shortcomings or something else. Be honest with it, be forward with it.
Well, and even if you're new about something and you're unsure of it, to still be honest with it and open and such like that. It may result in a yes to play, it may result in a no to play, but yeah, having that dialogue would be beneficial.
Safety first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of us were new once, right? None of us came out the womb, knowing how to do this shit and knowing that we liked it, right? We all had to figure it out at some point, right? But for me, it's about, I'll use the cliche term, it's about creating a safe space, right? An environment where we can be honest about what our experience is and what our goal is here, right? And it's about, as a top, if someone comes to me and says, I don't have any experience, doing this thing, and I really, just want kind of an intro thing and blah, blah, blah. It's beholden upon me as a top to evaluate whether I'm willing to take that on, because that's a different type of responsibility, right? And for me to say, okay, well, yeah, like, because that obviously means that you as the top have to change your expectations as well in terms of what you're going to get out of it, and not every top wants to take that on, right? But some people like me, I mean, I'm education minded. Mm-hmm. I mean, we tell a story. My wife and I, we went. What was it? It was the second time. So I went. I've been to Beat Me in St. Louis twice. The second time I went, I was invited to teach. Mm-hmm. And I went to teach, and I also volunteered to DM. And my wife came with me, and I was DMing, and my wife came into the dungeon while I was DMing, and she said, your DM shift is over like in 30 minutes, right? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, okay, well, when you're done, go back up to the room and get your toy bag and meet me in the other dungeon. We got something to do. Okay. Okay, so 30 minutes goes by. I get off my shift. I go up to the room. I get a toy bag. I come back down. And my wife is there with this guy who looks like a deer in the headlights. Now, my wife is, she'll admittedly tell you she is, she calls herself an obnoxious extrovert. She is the person who finds the person who doesn't have anybody to talk to, and that's like her new best friend, right? Mm-hmm. It turns out there was a guy at this event who, like, this was the first event he had ever gone to. And he was a new, and he wanted to be, he styled himself as, oh, well, I think I'm a top, and, I'm interested in learning how to do impact play, but like, I don't have a partner, and I came here, and I'm interested in learning about all this stuff. And she got to talking to him and stuff, and she basically was like, hey, so do you want to learn how to do that stuff? And he was like, yeah, but I don't have any toys, and I don't like have a person, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, that's fine. We got all of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like, okay. And so basically, she volunteered me and my toy bag and stuff into doing a thing where we basically taught this guy like how to do basic impact. And so we went into the dungeon, and she stripped down, and she demo bottomed. And basically, I brought my toy bag out, and I brought floggers out, and a paddle, and a cane, and I showed him, hey, these are what these are, and these are the basic techniques of how you use them. And then I used them on her a little bit, and then I handed them to him. Hey, use them on her.
Very cool.
And he started to use them a little bit on her, and then she would give him feedback. Oh, no, you can hit me harder, or don't hit there, or don't hit here, or whatever. And, by the end of it, he was, flogging her pretty hard and all of this stuff. And by the end of it, he went from being like a deer in the headlights to having a wide grin on his face.
That's awesome. That is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
And then the next day, he went to a vendor and bought floggers, right? And I mean, it was great, right? And then like 2 years later, Karen and I were working on staff for FIRE, the Florida Intensive Rope Experience in Orlando. Mm-hmm. And he came through the check-in line with a full-size suitcase full of toys, and was coming to a rope event with a partner.
That's cool.
And so he had this experience, and he just went from there, right? So it's this education thing, right? It's this, like, do you want to help people? Do you want to? And so for me, I got to a point in my life where, like, I had taken and taken and taken, right? Where people had taught me, people had showed me, people had invested in me. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, that's it. It's my turn to give back, right? And so doing stuff like that was a way to do that. But also doing things like having scenes with bottoms who are trying to explore, and doing that kind of patience and finding joy in that as well. And once again, I don't think that tops who don't want to do that are somehow bad people, right? Like that's not what I'm saying, but there is a joy in it, in me, in being able to help people explore in that way as well, right? And providing a safe space for people to explore for that. But once again, for me, it's just a matter of us being able to create an environment where people can be honest about their experience level, what they want, and not be shamed about it. Not be like, well, I'm the least experienced person in the room, and so I should just shut up.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Well, no, like, you have a right to have experiences and to learn and to have people help you too, just like everyone else. Right?
Yeah, I remember being at Beat Me in St. Louis when you were there teaching. I think that was our first big event together as a couple.
I think so.
And I remember a dude who met that description, deer in headlights, and just being astonished by that. So I'm thrilled to hear more of that story. But also, wonderful what your wife did to help teach. I think that's a wonderful way for anybody to learn, but especially a unattached male top to learn from a bottom who is willing to top from bottom and tell how to do things, and you're doing this right and you're doing that wrong. That's how I learned. It was absolutely perfect for me. They were able to point me in good directions on everything when I screwed up, when I did things right. It was great.
Yeah, or even like, hey, it's not for me, but like, I know a guy or I know someone. Hey, go talk to, or let me introduce you to this person. I bet you they would probably, if you feel comfortable with them, I bet you they could probably help you. I love doing that kind of stuff too. Like, hey, like, I don't have the time or the bandwidth, or it's not really my thing, but I know somebody. Let me get you in touch with somebody, and maybe you can maybe they can help you.
Oh, absolutely. It's we're a very education-minded community as a whole, and always trying to help each other out and learn and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those of like, if I'm not a good fit, then let me find you the best fit, of who might be the good recommendation and such like that. I'm always appreciative as a bottom of even a top who says, no, I'm not the best fit for you, but, here I know somebody who might fit like what you're looking for and what you need.
And topping from the bottom is not a bad thing.
Oh, absolutely. I advocate for newer tops. If you can find a bottom who is more experienced than you and will give you that feedback, or you can find one that like you can't break, right? Because they know they've already been broken and they know how to prevent it, right? They know when to call red, like when you're going to fuck up and break shit. And so they know when to call red and go, hey, listen, you were almost at the point where you were about to fuck stuff up. So let me tell you about how you were about to fuck stuff up, right? If you can find people like that, put your ego aside, put your, well, I'm the domly dom who's holding the whip right now aside, and learn from them, because they know and they'll make you better. I agree with you. However many more percent is possible, plus 100, Rabbi, I agree. In my life, so much of what I know and understand it has come from having experiences with people who bottomed for me or were in those situations, who facilitated my learning and my growth in that way. And so, yeah, but a lot of people, I think, have to feel this need either by ego or because they think it's the thing to do to sort of play the game of me dom, you sub, right? Like I'm the dom, I'm the top here, so I've always got to know the most, and I've always got to be in charge, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's kind of where that whole topping from the bottom thing comes from in the first place, as far as I can tell, is this whole idea that, like, the top has to somehow be superior in the whole thing, right? And when, to me, that doesn't exist. Topping from the bottom doesn't exist, because, like, if the top is not, like, if the bottom takes control from you, then you weren't ever really the top to begin with. And if you're not willing, and if you're not collaborating with the bottom to have a scene right here in the first place, like, then I'm not sure that what you're doing is like BDSM.
Something.
I think you're doing something else. I'm not sure what to call it, and I think if I were to say what I think, it would be really judgmental. So I won't. But what you're doing is not anything that I'm interested in doing, right? So, but yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's I approach education, in a formal sense that way. All of my classes, I always try to have a bottom who sometimes will talk just as much as I do, right? Because early in my journey, I sat in classes and realized that half of the people sitting in the audience with me were bottoms, and they were sitting in this class listening to Sir Domly Dom Top Man talk about how great it was to be a top and how Domly Dom Tops did Domly Dom Top stuff, and they were waiting for the one little nugget of stuff from a bottom, or they were waiting for Domly Dom Top Man to let his slave bottom girl to say one or two things about what slave bottom girl felt, right? And then were disappointed when she was only allowed to be furniture and not allowed to be talky talk slave girl, and realized that, like, those bottoms were not being served by this education. Right. And there was one whole half of the equation that was just, like, erased from the page. And so even in that respect, right, like, I can talk all the top stuff in all the stuff that we teach, but I can't talk from the bottom's perspective. I don't take this stuff regularly by choice or on purpose. So instead I try to bring someone along who will demo and is experienced and will answer questions and talk, and and I always try to leave an opening to say, hey, like, we talked about this and this and this. Was there anything from your perspective that we should talk about that like I didn't cover because I didn't think about it because I'm Sir Domly Dom over here and not the bottom who is doing all the hard work.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I'm very much the same way. I've only taught a few classes without Little Bit, and when the few times I have, I felt like I taught like half of the class and the other half wasn't there. Having that other point of view, the bottom point of view, the submissive point of view, the female point of view, whatever it might be, absolutely important when teaching this stuff. Otherwise, there's a big hole.
It feels like there's a big hole there. Like, once you start teaching that way, you realize that teaching the way that, like, the way that, like, I came up listening to just feels incomplete. It feels like you only did half the job, right? Like, I just can't imagine doing it any other way anymore. And so, like, if I'm in those situations like that, I almost feel like I should apologize to the audience, like, like the people who attend. Like, I'm really sorry that, like, you guys didn't get everything that you should get. because you're not getting the whole story here. And there's a lot of this that you guys should get that I just unfortunately can't provide you. And I'm really sorry that I can't. And like, I almost don't want to be doing this because I can't provide you all the context that I think that you deserve.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell people that, I've been told this happens. I've been told it feels this way, but it's completely different when you're hearing a firsthand account. And I think it's critical to have a good partner when teaching or doing a podcast or
something to that effect. I mean, we've gotten feedback before where we've taught the same class at or 2 different times at an event or something. And if I wasn't there, you've, said it didn't feel right. It didn't feel complete. And, you've lost out on that whole perspective that I can lend from it from a bottom side and such like that. It's one of those things.
Yeah. I mean, I'll often, I'll, kind of like Rabbi indicated, right? I'll say, I've had partners or people tell me X, Y, and Z, right? But that's not nearly as powerful as somebody who's actually felt it or done it, right? Because a lot of that doesn't facilitate the follow-up. It's like somebody has a question and then somebody answers it, but then that usually brings up a follow-up question in the original questioner's mind. But if they're asking someone who's just, and the answer is just secondhand regurgitated anecdote, right? The person asking the question already knows that like asking a follow-up question is probably pointless, right? The likelihood that they're going to have, context and a follow-up is, and so, I just, we do the best we can when we're constrained and we can't have all the resources we need, to do the best, give the best class that we can. But it sure does feel good when we can.
So, as we begin to wrap up, is there anything else about negotiation that we need to cover?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's just, I guess what I want people to take away from is that, the TLDR, I think, is just negotiations. If you can start seeing negotiations not as like eating your vegetables, but as like the beginning of the meal, it'll make it so much easier and actually make it so much more rewarding. If you make it a conversation and not just this stale information gathering process. And if you know what the end of the story is, if you and the person you're negotiating or persons you're negotiating with know what you want the outcome to be already, right? And you can start from there and work backwards. That often can be very, very rewarding.
Gotcha. If somebody wants to contact you, follow you on social media, how do they do that?
So I'm on FetLife, JustRob, all one word, JustRob. Or you can go to my house website. So it'd be House of Just. So just like it's spelled, houseofjust.com.
We'll throw those links into the show notes. Thanks for coming on the show, Rob. You've been a great guest talking to us today about negotiation. For our listeners, upcoming synagogue in-person and virtual classes on dollar store domination, chain fisting, electroplay, and much more are coming up. Visit our website to find out the details on those. But that's it. That's our show. Say goodnight, little bit.
Good night, little bit. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Follow us on Facebook, FetLife, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube as Synagogue BDSM, and on Instagram and TikTok as Synagogue Kink. If you enjoyed or learned something from this podcast, consider making a donation via PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, Patreon, or Ko-fi. username SynAgog, or find those links to all of those on our website, synagogbdsm.com. Remember, that's SynAgog with an I. Also on the website, links to past episodes, upcoming classes, book us as educators, shop our store, and more.
Synagogue hosts and guests are subject matter experts but are not the expert. We believe that, outside of violating consent, there is no wrong way to do kink, except to think your way is the only way. This show is presented from a RAC, risk-aware consensual kink point of view, and not SSC, safe, sane, consensual, because every individual's definition of safe is different based on their own risk profile. The use of the word safe on this show fits our definition of safe, and that does not have to be your definition. Opinions expressed by guests on the show are those of the person expressing the opinion, not of the show.
Just a reminder, we try to make our content as inclusive as possible, regardless of gender, orientation, role in the lifestyle, etc. But we do inherently speak from our own point of view. For the most part, substitute our identity with your own to make it work. We want to know when we make a mistake, so we can learn and grow from those mistakes. So if you feel like we did say something that is genuinely offensive, we encourage you to let us know. Reach out to us with your questions, comments, or concerns via our website or call us at 469-269-0403.
Brought to you today by the letters and the number
9. San Diego High School Football Room!